In three, two, one. Hello, and welcome to Know the Score. I'm your host, Don Delarente, and I'm here with my co host, the Libra icon, Dwayne. What's going on, Dwayne?
Not much. Football is back. Training camp's in full swing, and time to preview some teams.
All right. Know the Score is being brought to you by CSPN. You can find us on the web at cspn.us. So, like you said, Dwayne, we're going to start our Know the Score NFL preview. We're going to start with the NFC West and the AFC West. So, we're going to start first off with the NFC West and the Arizona Cardinals. Going to start with their key additions. They got a brand new coach in Steve Wilkes. They added Sam Bradford and Mike Glennon, both quarterbacks. They added wide receiver Bryce Butler and offensive lineman Justin Pugh and Andre Smith, along with cornerback Jamar Taylor. So, as we'll talk about here in a second, the Cardinals are going through a whole bunch of reshuffling, new coach. They basically had to change up their quarterback room. I know that you're familiar with Steve Wilkes. He's a Carolina Panther um, Rivera disciple. So, talk about what he's going to bring to the Arizona Cardinals.
He's going to bring a lot of discipline on the defensive side. He's going to bring a lot of interesting schemes to the defense. Offensive side of things, it's going to be really interesting to see what creativeness he does. It's really going to be more on the coordinators here to get this thing going. But I do like the fact that you know minority coaches get an opportunity here, especially with the Cardinals. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things go. And I am very, very keen on how you know these guys are going to do, especially Dion Buchanan, um, Scooby Wright. We're gonna see how it goes. They got a pretty decent secondary. Antoine Bethea, Benny Benwickery, who knows Steve Wilson's defensive scheme from his time in Carolina. You got good guys on the ends and Chandler Jones there. So Marcus Golden, of course. So it's probably going to be a 3-4 scheme, and we'll just have to see how things go. In this new regime here in Arizona. It's going to be a lot of change, a lot of different philosophies from what was before. You had a great coach that we'll talk about in just just a moment here, but um, I just really like the really interesting to see. It's going to be one of the more interesting teams that's going to be coming in this season. So this was a big gamble by Steve Keim, the GM, and we'll see what happens. Mike McCoy, who was the former Broncos coach, is the offensive coordinator. Byron Leftwich is the quarterbacks coach, and like I said many times, I'm just ready to see how it goes.
We'll talk about their losses as they had many. They lost their coach, Bruce Arians, of course, Carson Palmer, Drew Stanton, and Blaine Gabbert, and Matt Barkley. So their whole quarterback room has been changed. Uh, Running back Adrian Peterson, wide receivers John Brown and Jerian Brown, safety the Honey Badger Tyrann Mathieu, cornerback Justin Bethel, cornerback Tremaine Williams, defensive tackles Josh Morrow and Kareem Martin. So like you said, new regime coming in, new philosophies. So there's going to be some players who don't fit the philosophy, and in the case of the Honey Badger, maybe money doesn't add up, so he have to go elsewhere. So a lot of big names that they lost on the Arizona Cardinals this past offseason.
Yeah, well, in the meantime, I mean, you look at Bruce Arians. I mean, Bruce Arians been doing the football thing for many years. He deserves retirement. Youngest coach in Arizona Cardinals history, and this season includes going back to the days of the Chicago Cardinals. So, um, remember the Cardinals are the oldest NFL team. So the season's the '99 season of the team, 31st in Arizona. So, um, but Carson Palmer, obviously, I mean, he had flourished under Bruce Arians. Had a couple of injuries that ended his, that ended his season and ultimately the career. So he goes up to the sunset as well. Like you said, a whole new quarterback's room, and I'm just looking. It was a great era, pretty successful era. They had that appearance in the NFC title game in 2015 when they lost to the Panthers. But Adrian Peterson, things didn't just quite work out there. I also think that you got rid of Brown and Brown and John and Jerron. The only constant here is Larry Fitzgerald, who re-ups for 1 year. So um, hopefully he'll be able to make something out of nothing. We know Sam Bradford is one of the premier check down quarterbacks in the NFL. So I hope Larry Fitzgerald can, find ways to get more yards down the field. They do still have their speedster, J.J. Nelson. They still have Jermaine Gresham there as well. Bryce Butler, Greg Little, some additions there as well on the offensive side.
In the draft, they added quarterback Josh Rosen, wide receiver Christian Kirk, and center Mason Cole. So I don't think that Josh Rosen is going to be expected to pay many dividends this season. That may be a kind of sit and watch situation for him. But
Mm-hmm.
Christian Kirk may be a guy that gets a lot of run, can learn some things from Larry Fitzgerald, and maybe hopefully be the heir apparent. So, what do you think about Christian Kirk's playing time and what he could add to this team?
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how things go for Christian Kirk. I mean, they did draft him with the hope of becoming Larry Fitzgerald's heir apparent. I mean, it's pretty much not a matter of if Larry Fitzgerald retires, just when. And it's time to see what he could do. I mean, second round pick. Um, he has a great potential to be a very great player. Um, we might be seeing a lot of connections, a lot of touchdowns from Josh Rosen to Christian Kirk in the future. And the hope is that these guys will flourish down the road. So there's a lot of faith, a lot of potential, a lot of possible success there. And just have to see how it plays out. Depends on what kind of work he puts on the field.
All right. Next, we'll move over to the Los Angeles Rams, the team that did the most wheeling and dealing in the offseason by far. Their key additions are wide receiver Brandon Cook and Ndamukong Suh, defensive tackle, cornerback Marcus Peters, and Aqib Talib, cornerback Sam Shields as well, and linebacker Ramik Wilson. Now, the Rams have added more speed on the outside with Cooks. They've totally changed up their secondary with Peters and Talib on the outside. Talib knows the system very well that Wade Phillips is going to run. They're going to try to pair Ndamukong Suh alongside Aaron Donald. Contract yet to be determined. So, talk about the Los Angeles Rams. They look so formidable on paper, but do you think there's going to be chemistry issues, or do you think that they can make this thing work and go, because they're going for the Super Bowl like this year? It's very obvious.
I mean, they had one of the biggest surprises of last season. I mean, got back to first. We got a new coach, Sean McVay. He led them to pretty wild heights last season, and now it's going to be who is who's going to take them to the next level. So this is why they made these moves. They were, like you said, they were probably looking into trying to get a Super Bowl in the new stadium, trying to get a Super Bowl celebration in the new Inglewood Stadium by trying to get this one this year. So the additions, Brandon Cooks, he's a speed receiver, probably faster than Sammy Watkins, who is also a speedster. But my concern was, Sammy Watkins didn't get the ball as much as he should have. But, he's such a big threat that Brandon Cooks poses that threat as well. And then you also have on the defensive end, a formidable line with Sue and Donald, potentially, wreaking havoc on opposing quarterbacks. And like in the secondary with Peters and Talib on opposite sides of the ball, that's going to be a very, very good secondary duo. I like the fact that the Rams made these moves. I also like the fact they're going full time with the blue and yellow throwbacks for the season. So not only are they trying to bring back a nostalgic feeling, but they're also trying to they're also moving forward as well as they try to get that, Super Bowl and get that Thursday night game in Inglewood for 2020 or 2019, I should say.
Their key losses are receivers Tavon Austin and Sammy Watkins, linebacker Alec Ogletree, defensive end Robert Quinn, cornerbacks Kavion Webster and Trumaine Johnson. So some really good defensive players they lost. The receivers, like you said, you maybe think Sammy Watkins could have gotten more looks. Seems like nobody could ever figure out what to do with Tavon Austin. They could never get a defined role for him. So it'll be interesting to see if they can recover, especially Alec Ogletree. I thought he was a very good player for them. Be interesting to see if they can kind of, fill that void as the season goes on. So of these key losses, especially on defense, which one do you think is going to hurt them the most?
I think the one that's going to really hurt them, probably, I'll say two. The first one's Robert Quinn. Robert Quinn and Aaron Donald, two guys on the ends that could really get to the quarterback. And, that's going to be a huge deal. And also Trumaine Johnson as well. I mean, Trumaine Johnson was one of the top shutdown corners for this team. But when you view a guy that's familiar in the system with Aqib Talib, and you really feel like Marcus Peters is more of an upgrade to what you want to do than Trumaine Johnson. I think those two really stuck out to me. And like you also alluded to, Alec Ogletree, who was a really good player for them, but he just did not get the offers that he felt he deserved, so he went elsewhere.
In the draft, they added an offensive lineman in Joe Noteboom and a center in Brian Allen and a defensive end, John Franklin Myers. So we wouldn't expect them to be, making too many big splashes in the draft since they added all these names in the free agency and the preseason. But it's going to be very interesting to see if Sean McVay can get the chemistry together on the team, along with Wade Phillips, kind of their coaching. I think it's going to have to do a lot more with the locker room than the actual, on the field. I think the talent on the field may help them win a lot of games, but can they keep everybody's ego in check and all those personalities focused on trying to win the Super Bowl, and something special could happen for the Rams.
I think they can. I think one thing about Sean McVay, he is a young coach. He's 32 years old, but he's already commanded a lot of respect in that organization, within that team. I think, and look what he did with Jared Goff. I mean, we all saw the Jeff Fisher effect in the case of Jared Goff. I mean, we thought Jared Goff would be horrible his first 8 starts, but then he got a full season with a good quarter coach who is a brilliant offensive mind, and they go 11-5, and win the NFC West, get a playoff game. So I think they already have the chemistry, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think Wade Phillips, who's a better coordinator than he is a head coach, he'll get the defense in check. I think if the Rams stay healthy, that's really going to be the thing. Can they stay healthy enough and survive that California weather to make it to the promised land, which is Super Bowl?
All right, this is Know the Score. I'm their host, Don Delarente. I'm joined by my co-host, the Libra icon, Dwayne, and we are previewing the NFC West. So we're going to move on to the San Francisco 49ers. Their key additions in the offseason: cornerback Richard Sherman, center Weston Richburg, running back Jerick McKinnon, offensive guard Jonathan Cooper, and defensive end, I'm going to butcher this, Jeremiah Attacho. Hopefully I didn't do too bad of a disservice on that. Coming off a great second half of the season where they got themselves hopefully for them, a franchise quarterback. Everything is pointing up towards Jimmy Garoppolo being a franchise quarterback. They added Jerick McKinnon in the backfield. Surprise move for me. Thought that maybe Carlos Hyde would be, their franchise guy after the second half that he had once he got an established quarterback. But, greener pastures prevailed for him. So of these key additions, Richard Sherman would probably be the biggest name. But do you feel that somebody besides him will have a greater impact when it comes to the 49er season this year?
I think Jerick McKinnon is going to be the bigger impact because that will allow Carlos Hyde to get more rest, and he won't be.
No, Carlos Hyde signed with the Browns in the free agency. Yep.
He did. Okay. In that case, I think I really think looking at the key additions, probably it will be Richard Sherman, but we'll have to see how he's going to do coming off that injury. And once we see how he does off that injury, we'll go from there. But it's really probably the key addition that's not on here was signing Jimmy Garoppolo to that deal that locked him in as their franchise quarterback. I mean, he was really effective in the grand scheme of things in the 49ers offense. I mean, this was a team that started 0-10, and then they finished 6-10. So I don't think he's gonna go 16-0 next season, but he's gonna really have a decent season, and the rapport he already built with a lot of his receivers has been amazing, and coming in, and it only has to go up from there.
Again, their key losses: running back Carlos Hyde, center Daniel Kilgore, and defensive end Elvis Dumervil.
See, this wasn't listed in the key losses. That's why I thought Hyde was still there.
Okay. Oh, gotcha.
Okay, that's why. All right, so I think they should have locked in Dumervil. I think he had a nice. I mean, everywhere he's been, he's had a great defensive presence. So it's going to be interesting to see how they react to that and go from there. So not really much to say really with the 49ers. They really didn't. They added a couple key players. They already got their franchise quarterback. They locked in his favorite target as well, Marquise Goodwin. If you saw those 6 games, Garoppolo and Goodwin, they really developed major chemistry that became his favorite target. Goodwin's numbers went up, and so I wanted to see how that continues to go from there. So, not really, they didn't do too much in this grand scheme of things, but keep everything from last year. We'll just have to see how it goes with the full body work and a full season ahead.
In the draft, they added offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey, wide receiver Dante Pettis, linebacker Fred Warner, and safety Tavares Moore. So one more target and somebody to protect Garoppolo in the future, and some more help on defense. So smart drafting. You're only going to have limited draft picks. You got to use them wisely. So I think the 49ers are going to be in the mix for sure this upcoming season. Maybe not quite a playoff team, but they're definitely going to be on the fringe. They're going to be, on the in the hunt box when the November rolls around.
Yeah, agreed. I think they'll probably definitely battle Seattle or possibly second in the NFC West. I think the Rams have. I think the Rams win the division. I mean, we'll go into the order a little bit, but I think they. I agree they're definitely a playoff contender on paper right now.
All
So see
right.
how it plays out.
And our final team that we're going to preview in the NFC West, the Seattle Seahawks. Their key additions: wide receiver Brandon Marshall, linebacker Barcavius Mingo, tight end Ed Dixon, wide receiver Jan Brown, safety Maurice Alexander, cornerback Dante Johnson, offensive lineman DJ Fluker, and kicker Sebastian Janikowski. So Seattle going through a identity change this year, as we'll talk about their key losses here in a second. Um, Brandon Marshall bouncing around the league here his last couple of years, can't seem to find a home. Ed Dixon, coming in from the Ravens. So talk about who you think is going to help the Seattle Seahawks as they make this transition from what we've known them as to maybe Russell Wilson's team.
Well, I think it is going to be a huge transition. Russell Wilson's going to have to really step his game up, and he's going to have to be, um, we're known for him scrambling and making plays with his legs, which is awesome. That's what he does very well, but we're going to have to really see him be more of a passer because, you know, we don't have, we'll get into the losses a little bit. Um, you don't have Jimmy Graham. You got Brandon Marshall, but who are you gonna? I mean, besides Brandon Marshall, who else you have? We got rid of Jermaine Kearse. We got rid of Paul Richardson. We got rid of. Um, it looks like this will be a team of CJ Prosise in the backfield. You got Doug Baldwin. Still, you got Tyler Lockett, who's probably going to be the third receiver. Jerron Brown, who came from Arizona. He's in Seattle now. Ed Dixon, I think he's going to. I mean, he played in Carolina. So he was under Greg Olson. I think he went from being stone hands to pretty reliable tight end. So I think he has something there for Russell Wilson. So this is going to be a more offensively focused team than we've seen in the past. I mean, there's still key cogs in the Seattle defense, um, but we'll just have to see how things go because You know, Bobby Wagner is probably the anchor in that defense, and as long as they have, you know, that anchor on defense and a couple of guys that return, Byron Maxwell, and hey, you know, they got a very good kicker in Sebastian Janikowski. So we'll see what happens in the transition of the Seattle Seahawks.
The key losses were many, especially on the defensive side, where we had cornerback Richard Sherman, of course. We had defensive lineman Michael Bennett, defensive lineman Sheldon Richardson, defensive lineman Cliff Averill, a cornerback Jeremy Lane, cornerback Deshaun Shedd, tight end Luke Wilson, tight end Jimmy Graham, and wide receiver Paul Richardson. So the Legion of Boom is no longer constituted as we knew it. It has been totally broken up. It looks like Earl Thomas is the only one left, and he's doing everything he can to get out of Seattle. He wants to go play for the Cowboys in his heart. So, of the many losses on defense, I know it's going to be hard to pick just one, but just talk about this philosophy change. And, how did you see Seattle winning football games now? Because it doesn't look like they're going to be able to stop anybody, or at least not to the effect that we're used to.
Yeah, well, I mean, Cam Chancellor is virtually retired. So, you know, he's on the pup list right now. Like you said, Earl Thomas is trying to get out of Seattle. Byron Maxwell came back to Seattle, but is he really the same Byron Maxwell? And will he be as effective without Richard Sherman on the other side? I say no. Bobby Wagner is going to be the anchor of that defense, and he's going to have to really be the leader. He's going to have to be the guy that's going to make all the tackles, he's going to be the quarterback of that defense. And it's not going to be what we have come to know about Seattle for the last 4 or 5 years. It's that era is over, and now we just gotta. It is going to be a transition. That's going to be the identity, but we're gonna, like I said, it's just a transition phase, and I just don't see being the top team in the NFC West for all this time. And we kind of saw the changing of the guard last year when the Rams won the NFC West. And, you know, it used to be that it was either Seattle or Arizona in the division. Now, you know, LA is coming, Seattle's transitioning, San Francisco's on the rise, and Arizona's a wild card. So this defense, I think the biggest loss was probably going to be Cliff Averill, Michael Bennett, because they were able to get to the quarterback, and they made a lot, that pressure that they put on opposing quarterbacks made it a lot easier for the secondary to get interceptions, made it easier for the middle linebackers and outside linebackers to make plays. And, you know, without a big rush, it's going to be crazy to see Seattle give up a lot of points that we're not used to.
All right, and additions for the key rookies that they had in the draft: running back Rashad Penny, defensive end Rasheem Green, punter Michael Dixon, and outside linebacker Shaq Griffin. So, of course, Shaq Griffin would probably be the most notable for his story. His twin brother, also plays for the Seattle Seahawks as well. So that'll be a very fun story to watch throughout the preseason, especially, and then we'll see what type of plays or time he gets during the regular season. But I'm more interested in Rashad Penny because we've had this kind of musical chairs at running back since Marshawn Lynch has left Seattle. They can't find, that every down running back. So that's who I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can contribute in the preseason and throughout the season.
Well, it's going to just depend on the health, because that's the reason why there's no consistent running back in Seattle. We saw Chris Carson, we saw Mike Davis, we saw C.J. Prosise, J.D. McKissick. We have so many. Every single time Seattle got a back that looks like they were promising after Marshawn Lynch, we thought Thomas Rawls was going to be that guy. He got hurt, and now he's gone. C.J. Prosise was on the way. He got hurt. Mike Davis was pretty effective. Then he got hurt. Chris Carson was looking good. Then he got hurt. So if Rashad Penny is able to avoid that injury bug in that running backs room, he might be the guy. And he's going to really be that guy that can get up the field, and that will help Russell Wilson in so many ways in terms of getting rid of the ball in or out the pocket. If Rashad Penny can catch the ball, even better, because he can have that security blanket out the backfield, and it's going to just be one dynamic offense if that is a success.
All right. So as we wrap up the NFC West, let's go ahead and get your predictions. We don't have to give a record, but who do you think is going to win the division, and do you think there's going to be more than one playoff team from this division?
One playoff team. The winner will be the LA Rams. Seattle second, San Francisco third. You could flip-flop that if you want to. And then I think Arizona is going to be in that transition. They're going to be the team that hits the cellar in this division.
All right. I think as well that the Rams are going to win the division again. I think that San Francisco is going to be close second, and then I think Seattle is going to be a little bit further back, and then, like you said, Cardinals are going to be in rebuilding mode, so they may be near the top of the draft next year. So that was the NFC West preview. This is Know the Score. Know the Score can be found on the CSPN. We can also be found on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, and Google Play. So now we're going to shift over to the AFC West. We're going to start with the Denver Broncos. They added quarterback Case Keenum, defensive tackle Clinton McDonald, cornerback Tremaine Brock, and punter Marquette King. Their key losses were the running back C.J. Anderson, left tackle Donald Stevenson, and cornerback Aqib Talib. So new quarterback, Denver's kind of had this musical chairs thing going around at quarterback since Peyton Manning left in the last Super Bowl. I really liked the guy that they had last year. I can't think of his name. His name is escaping me. But he just threw too many interceptions, and he couldn't, get enough touchdowns. On Trevor Siemian, he couldn't get enough touchdowns to, offset his interception problems. But I thought, if they kind of would stick with him, that he would maybe grow into that. But they've gone out and got Case Keenum. So how do you see Case Keenum working in to the Denver Broncos offense and their offensive philosophy?
Well, I think for Case Keenum, he's going to have the opportunity to start. Paxton Lynch, we thought he would be ready by now, but apparently he's not. Anytime you lose a competition to Trevor Siemian, that kind of shows you're far from ready. So now this, I really thought Case Keenum was perfect in Minnesota. I thought that was the perfect team for him. He really embraced that city. The fans embraced him as well. You remember that Skull chant in the New Orleans game that he led, and the crowd was all behind it. So now that he's moved on to Denver, I think that, you know, it's going to be tough because, Broncos fans always compare every quarterback since Elway to Elway, with the exception of Peyton Manning. But I just hope that he does well, and I hope that he's able to get the ball to the right receivers. To But he's got guys to throw it to. It's not like he doesn't have guys to throw it to. So I think he'll be okay. I think he doesn't have to worry about looking over his shoulder for somebody to try to take his job. And he's got two great receivers on the outside, Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, and so Case Keenum will be fine, and there should be not that many issues unless he just has very, very poor play that forces the Broncos' hand.
All right. They added in the draft edge rusher Bradley Chubb, receiver Cortland Sutton, running back Royce Freeman, cornerback Isaac Guidam, linebacker Josie Jewell, and receiver Deshaun Hamilton. So Bradley Chubb was maybe widely considered the all-around best player in the draft. He fell down to them at number 5. He's going to help Von Miller create some havoc back on that defensive line. So, this could kind of be the same team that Minnesota was for Case Keenum, where he just has to go out there and make the right play, doesn't have to make the spectacular play. Don't be afraid to punt. And, the defense doesn't look like they're going to have much fall off, except for maybe in the secondary. But if they can get enough pressure up front with Chubb and Von Miller, that might not be such an issue. So how do you see Bradley Chubb affecting this defense, getting younger, one more pass rusher, and maybe helping out the secondary that isn't going to be quite as good?
It's perfect because DeMarcus Ware retired, and DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller were one dynamic duo on the outside. Just look at Super Bowl 50, which I don't want to relive, but that was a prime example. So with that being said, you get Bradley Chubb in, put him opposite Von Miller, and if Von Miller continues to wreak havoc, Bradley Chubb's going to be right there beside him wreaking havoc on the opposite side. And not only do you still have that help from Bradley Chubb, you also have actually you do not. Oh yeah, you do. You got Shane Ray. Shane Ray is still on the outside as a linebacker, so you can always plug in those two top. I want to say top 10 picks. You can rotate those guys in and out along with Von Miller, so the drop off isn't much whatsoever when it comes to the addition of Bradley Chubb on the defensive side of the ball.
We'll move over to the Kansas City Chiefs as they added receiver Sammy Watkins, linebacker Anthony Hitchens, cornerback David Emerson, and cornerback Kendall Fuller. Their key losses were quarterback Alex Smith, offensive guard Zach Fulton, receiver Albert Wilson, defensive tackle Benny Logan, edge rusher Tamba Hali, and cornerback Marcus Peters. So Alex Smith had a career year last year. He's no longer with the team. Marcus Peters was having came off a great year, maybe not so much this past season. He's no longer with the team. Tamba Hali, who was known as their best pass rusher, he's no longer on the team. So a team that won the division last year, going through so many changes, especially with their offense and their major players on defense. What do you think is going to be affected the most, the offense or the defense, with the loss of Alex Smith or Tamba Hali?
That's a good question because you could say the defense is going to be affected in a good way because they don't have to go back on the field so very often with Alex Smith always throwing underneath the sticks for the first down. I mean, he had those rare occasions where he throw the ball to Hill, and that would be once in a blue moon kind of opportunity. So, um, yeah, this is going to be an identity change. I think they got rid of the guys who didn't want to be here, as well as guys who just didn't really um, care for the lifestyle of the league and things of that sort. My thing is with Alex Smith leaving, this is Patrick Mahomes' team now. This is why he was drafted in the first round at number 13, and this is something that, hey, Chiefs fans been wanting a change. I think the Chiefs been wanting a change, and they're about to get it this season. So at this point, we'll just have to go to watch these games with the Chiefs, see how he performs, and go from there.
Now, Patrick Mahomes, you speak of him, he's known for having big arm, being able to scramble around, make some plays happen. We talked about Sammy Watkins and what he did not get when he was with the Rams. Do you think that now that he's with a young guy who's going to be looking for somebody to be consistent, and appears that the Chiefs are going to have more of a downfield passing attack, as you alluded to Alex Smith and his, underneath, throws? You think that this is going to help Sammy Watkins finally, reclaim the star that he once had? Wait.
Okay. Yes.
You got me?
Yeah, I said it one more time.
Sammy Watkins.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think he's gonna, be able to have a career bounce back?
I think he will because you got Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce on the opposite side, so teams don't have to focus directly on Sammy Watkins as they did in Buffalo and Los Angeles before Robert Woods became more of an option. Because in those two destinations, he was the focal point of the offense, and not only was he the focal point of the offense, he was also the best receiver on the team. He's still going to be the best receiver on the team, but if you put two guys on him, you have two other guys that can go and make plays, and we have seen Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce make a lot of great plays. So this is definitely a dynamic team. I think Watkins has a bounce back year, and this is just going to be a fun ride for the Chiefs and their fans at Arrowhead.
All right. Their key rookies: defensive end Breeland Speaks, defensive tackle Derek Nandi, linebacker Dorian O'Daniel, and safety Armani Watts. Any of those guys that you think are going to, be able to have a breakout season or contribute this season in a big way?
Not really at the moment. We'll just have to. I just want to see how they go through the preseason and then see if they're high enough on the depth chart to even have to make a factor and make an impact on the team.
All right. This is Know the Score. We're being brought to you by the CSPN. I'm your host, Don Delarente, and I'm joined by my co-host, the Libra icon, Dwayne, and we're previewing the AFC West. So we'll move on to the Los Angeles Chargers. Their key additions: center Mike Pouncey, tight end Virgil Green, and kicker Caleb Sturgis. The key losses: tight end Antonio Gates, tight end Hunter Henry due to getting injured in OTAs, offensive guard Matt Slauson, and edge rusher Jeremiah Atisho.
Wow.
So Chargers, hard luck team in every game last year. They always start slow, but they always finish fast, and they just didn't have enough time in a lot of games and time in the season last year. Phillip Rivers is still going to be out there slinging it around, but his old buddy Antonio Gates retired, and his new buddy Hunter Henry is going to be injured. So talk about what you see coming up for the Los Angeles Chargers. I know we don't have really a lot of their moves that they made last year turned out to be, some building blocks for this upcoming season. But through the losses on offense, how do you think that's going to affect Phillip Rivers in his upcoming season?
Well, oh man, this is going to be tough because, like you said, Phillip Rivers, he doesn't have his tight end security blanket. He doesn't have Gates. He doesn't have Henry. He's going to find a way, though. That's one thing I can say about him. And let's not act like, this is a team that that made some pretty decent moves themselves. So I want to say this. If we look here, they're going to try to improve their record, and they have a new offensive coordinator, Ken Wisenhunt, as well. You got Melvin Gordon out the backfield. You have Keenan Allen, who was the comeback player of the year. You got Travis Benjamin on the opposite side. You got Mike Williams. You got Tyrell Williams. And Virgil Green, who came from the Denver Broncos. I think he'll probably be the guy that will start in Hunter Henry's place. And yeah, this is a team that actually will be one of the teams to contend for in the AFC West. Sorry, despite the fact they're playing the soccer stadium, but that's a whole other story. But one thing, and then also they signed Russell Okung. So Russell Okung is going to be in the left tackle position for the next 4 years, guarding Phillip Rivers' blind side. So Phillip Rivers will probably be able to stay upright a little bit longer, and he'll be able to make those throws that, Chargers fans, all three of them in LA, will enjoy.
Their draft, they added Derwin James, Uchenna Nwosu. I'm sorry I butchered that. Defensive tackle Justin Jones, and safety Kaiser White. So I know everybody's excited about Derwin James coming in, playing safety for them. Adding to that defense, he should be able to flourish because they have such a beast pass rush up front with Joey Bosa and that crew, putting a lot of pressure on quarterbacks. So I'm looking forward to seeing what type of plays he can make. He's so smart. He's so fast. So it'll be very interesting. I think he's got a really good chance to be Rookie of the Year because, he's going to get a lot of opportunities, I think, to make some plays.
All right. And so I think one thing that the three Chargers fans and the Rams fans in LA can possibly agree upon is, hey, what if all Los Angeles Super Bowl is bound to happen? It could, likely won't, but you never know.
All right. And then we're going to move on to the final team in the AFC West preview, and that is the Oakland Raiders. Their key additions are coach John Gruden, running back Doug Martin, receivers Jordy Nelson and Martavius Bryant, linebacker Tahir Whitehead, linebacker Derek Johnson, cornerback Rashawn Melvin, cornerback Daryl Worley, and safety Marcus Gilchrist. Their key losses: receiver Michael Crabtree, defensive end Danico Autry, cornerback TJ Carey, and cornerback David Emerson, the place kicker Sebastian Janikowski, and punter Marquette King. So the big news for the Raiders, of course, John Gruden coming out of the booth, coming into the coaching ranks once again with the Raiders, 10-year contract. So he's going to be paired up with Derek Carr. Looks like they're going to try to do a hybrid of the Raiders' traditional go down the field offense with John Gruden's West Coast philosophies. So, it's one thing to do it for a television show and spend a weekend maybe with John Gruden. But how is life going to be for Derek Carr now that he's going to have John Gruden as his head coach?
Well, I think this is going to be a smooth transition in terms of this team getting the pieces together. So with the fact that you're merging offenses for the most part, Derek Carr, if anything, is a professional, true professional. He'll definitely adjust to this scheme. He'll definitely find ways to make plays, and then once everything begins, we should be having a relatively good time in Oakland.
Yeah, they've got a lot of possibilities out there. It's just going to be, I was talking to my cousin, can John Gruden deal with these younger players? He hasn't coached anybody like the whole team of guys in, a decade plus. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can kind of connect with these guys and get them all focused and in tune with his coaching style. Does his style still work?
Yeah, that's going to be the $1 million question, because it's just like any other sport, the sport changes and schemes change, things change, and if that calls John Gruden to this team and their new cause of mission, it's gonna be a interesting ride, because he's there for a long time, and so I don't want. I'm sorry. Let me go back. I don't want to see a team that's this good go down the drain. Because coaching can't adapt. You got to adapt to perish. I think Gruden's seen enough football. I think he's seen enough Oakland Raider football over the years to say, this is a situation I can't come back to, and I'm happy to be here.
Right. In the draft, they added offensive tackle Colton Miller, defensive tackle PJ Hall, offensive tackle Brandon Parker, defensive end Arden Key, and defensive tackle Maurice Hurst. So we know that John Gruden is going to want to run the football. So adding offensive linemen is not an out of the blue thing for their draft picks. It seems like John Gruden is going to have to get Khalil Mack into camp and onto the football field. So he's got one pressing issue right now as far as personnel goes, because he's in charge of everything. So how can we foresee the Khalil Mack situation playing out? Do you think he's going to sit out some actual games, or is this just the, hey, I'll sit out training camp, make my voice heard, and then I'll come play?
I think it's going to be he's sitting out training camp. Then he's going to make his voice known, and the displeasure of it all known. That's what I think will happen here. The odds of that are pretty slim, but that Mac will get a new deal or the fact he'll report. So he's ready to sit out as long as he can, and he's not hesitating on that. So what I want to say for Khalil Mack is, get your money and get what you feel like you deserve. I think if Gruden does value Khalil Mack, which I definitely think he should, get him the money that he deserves. So it's one of those things where we just gotta play it out and see where it goes from here.
All right, so that is the AFC West. So at this time, Dwayne, I want to get your prediction on again. Who do you think is going to win the division, and do you think more than one playoff team will come from this division?
More than one playoff team will come from this division. I think the LA Chargers will. And I think the other team that's going to be in the playoffs is Kansas City. I think Kansas City can compete for the AFC West title. Oakland's in the mix, definitely. And then finally, you got the Denver Broncos right there. So,
yeah, this division could be a lot closer than you would initially believe, because I don't think that these teams are that far apart from each other.
that is correct. I think in the last few years, one of the most tightly contested division races always belonged in the AFC West. This is and so now at the end of it all, I think you got I was about to say San Diego, Los Angeles, and Oakland. Oakland's there. I think Oakland's going to need a lot of work though to mesh under Gruden to get back into that grand scheme of things as well.
All right. So that's been our previews of the NFC and AFC West. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Dwayne for his final thoughts and his thank yous.
Final thoughts. I want to say thank you to all the listeners. I love doing this. I love giving out my knowledge and my insight to you guys. So thank you for listening each and every week. I do it for y'all. Don, as always, thank you for having me. Shout out to Jesse and Tobias, my family back in North Carolina. And my final thought is the TBT, the basketball tournament. You remember just being able to see alumni teams from different colleges. We have Scarlet and Gray, Ohio State. We have Boeheim's Army, guys from Syracuse. We have so many different teams and a lot of college players that didn't really make it in the pros or are flourishing elsewhere. Team Fredette, Jimmer Fredette, who is flourishing in China, but he is back in the States, taking a shot at a $2 million prize. This is a situation where a lot of guys who just want to play the game of basketball because they love the game of basketball. Greg Oden, who played 2 years ago, he's just playing. He played his first game in the TBT tournament. Played his first game since 2016, and he just said that he's just there for fun and he's not looking to make a comeback. And then we have a lot of other guys. You got Gale Force, who's from St. Mary's, I want to say, and a lot of NBA scouts. They do look at guys in the TBT tournament to see if they can, sign a G League contract and, maybe even come back into the league. You never know. But Jimmer Fredette dropped 41 on the Fort Wayne team last night. So that was pretty awesome to see. It's kind of like 2011 all over again.
Yeah, I caught a little bit of that Scarlet and Gray game, and Aaron Craft was out there doing work. So yes, it's kind of cool to see some of those guys from a couple of years not too far removed, still out there putting in some work. So yeah, good deal that they got going on over there at the TBT. My final thoughts and thank yous will be just please support the show by going to cspn.us, click on a tab that says keep the podcast free, go buy a t-shirt from Busty Tees, be cool this summer, and help know the score at cspn.us through Busty Tees. My final thought for the sports would be congratulations to all the guys who are going into the Major League Hall of Fame, as we have Jack Morris, Alan Trammell, Vladimir Guerrero, Jim Thome, Chipper Jones, and Trevor Hoffman for this year's class. All guys pretty much deserving. Can't believe that Alan Trammell just getting into the Hall of Fame.
That is wow.
He's such a great player, especially my early years of watching baseball. Yes. Him and Jack Morris being teammates on the 1984 Detroit Tigers, so I guess that's very fitting. We need Sweet Lou in there too, Lou Whitaker, but maybe next year.
Yeah, Jack Morris also, man, that legendary World Series game, that 10-inning shutout. That was one of my favorite baseball moments ever, so the pitch, not only a complete game, but an extra inning in the World Series Game 7. That was just astounding.
Vladimir Guerrero, of course, one of the most feared hitters and also feared outfielders in the game, definitely deserving. Jim Thome, just a longevity,
Charlotte Knights,
always consistent. One of the top home run hitters in the game. Chipper Jones lived up to the hype, number 1 pick. He and Ken Griffey Jr. are the only 2 number 1 picks to be selected into the Hall of Fame.
Can I interject on?
Don't let your haterade come through.
No. Let me. As a baseball fan, Chipper was awesome. As a Met fan, he just tortured me, man. And I can't get over that. And I still hate the fact that he named his son after Shea Stadium. Petty. But that's okay, though. Congratulations, Chipper Jones. As well deserved. So.
Yeah, man. Chipper Jones, he's been in the spotlight since he's like 16 years old. I think he was the first minor league baseball player, high school baseball player, to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He got injured. He was an outfielder. He got injured, and that might have been the best thing that ever happened to him because it moved him from the outfield to third base. And then he became one of the most feared hitters and switch hitters in the game. I think he's the only switch hitter to have 1,000 plate appearances with a 300 batting average, 400 on base, and 500 slugging percentage. So much deserved for Chipper Jones and Trevor Hoffman.
I was about to say, you can't leave out Trevor Hoffman.
Yes, all-time saves leader.
Yeah, with your Chipper love here.
Oh, no. Trevor, we'll get to him. Trevor Hoffman, all-time saves leader, did it without overpowering stuff. He didn't have, the 103-mile-an-hour fastball, did it with a lot of cunning and guy. He was a second career guy, too. He was a guy who started off as a starter, and then kind of that didn't work out for him, but then he found his niche as a closer. So much love to him as well. So, all guys deserving of the Baseball Hall of Fame. This Hall of Fame can be very petty sometimes, but I think they really did well with this class this year.
They really did. I agree. And I can even put my pettiness aside and shout out Chipper. So
yeah. So big shout out to them. Big shout out to, like Dwayne said, all the fans, everybody who listens, Jesse and the Bias, all the podcasters here on the CSPN who do the content and sacrifice their time each and every week. I really appreciate them and all that they do for the network and all the listeners as well. So continue to support us, and we'll continue to let you know the score. So for Dwayne, I'm Don Delarente, and now you know the score. All right, brother man.
All right.
Have a good afternoon. What you got going on?
I'm gonna try to get a haircut and finally remove this rug from my head. So uh, that's probably the main thing, and then trying to tie up a few loose ends before work, and then I'm off tomorrow. Then I'm back to watching another training class. So
All right. All right, bud.
all
I'm
right,
gonna do
man.
some grocery shopping before I got to go to work later on in the day.
All right, cool.
All right, bud. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
All right, later.